Good morning, this is Grassroots Rising, and this is Jimmy Snowgard. Today I'm here with Keith, and we're going to solve the problems of election, how are we going to call it? Election limitation? What are we talking about?
Election
Restrictions, citizen restrictions in Wyoming politics today. So I just read an article by Tom Lednow in Cowboy State Daily, where he said there were over 100 pieces of legislation proposed over the past 4 years. Did you happen to see that? Those restrictive pieces of legislation introduced in the House or the Senate in Wyoming?
I know there have been many, and they're ongoing, and they're still going, and they have talked with the corporations.
When we say they,
I'm sorry, the legislature as a whole.
The legislature, and specifically the Corporations Committee?
Corporations Committee, yes.
Yeah. Do you know who sits on that committee? I haven't really looked at it.
No, but I know their attitude by their results, and I do not know the personalities.
Right. Who sits on the Corporation Committee? Anyway, the idea that we can introduce that many pieces of legislation in Wyoming, and all in regards to control, I think it's folks trying to control other folks, trying to limit the access and chill voter participation in elections. What do you think, Keith? Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes, and one key point is that when they started to tinker with the election system, it was a very good system. There had been years and years work put into working on the election system, making it more accessible for people, making the system work correctly. The legislators did that, the county clerks did that. There was a wide-scale effort to make it a good system, a viable system, and a fair system. And that's what we started with, and that's what's being attacked.
Yeah, we started with a good system, right? We even enshrined some things in the state constitution, like the untrammeled right to suffrage, which means basically that you should not impede the right of the citizen to make a vote, to exercise his right to vote.
Well, very true. And the Constitution, the state constitution, is an excellent document. In many ways, it's much more readable and understandable than the U.S. Constitution, because it was written 100 years newer, so the language is easier to read.
Right.
Plus, the authors of the Constitution looked at other state constitutions. Wyoming was the 44th state, so they looked at other states and what they had in their constitutions and incorporated that into ours.
So, Keith, tell me what you think about the oath. You've served in various positions in the system of our government here locally, in the state government, right? And so, what you swore the oath to support and defend the Constitution, not only of the United States, but of the state of Wyoming, right? The Constitution of the state of Wyoming.
That's correct. I took the oath 7 times, and I meant it 7 times. And I tried to live by that. So every vote I made, I tried to assess whether or not it was constitutional or not, first and foremost, before looking at the language, the specific topic of the bill.
So, tell me, basically, recite the oath for me, just for the listeners, so we kind of got an idea of what it is. This Article 1, Section 27. So
I don't have it memorized.
Well, you don't have it memorized, but in general, it's still the same thing, right? I Keith, swear or affirm that I'm going to uphold and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Wyoming.
And the state of Wyoming. That's the key part that I was trying to get at.
Yes.
You swore 7 times that you were going to uphold the Constitution of the state of Wyoming.
I did.
And so when we see our local and state reps make that same oath, and then I just pulled up Article 1, Section 27, which says elections shall be open, free, and equal, and no power, civil or military, shall at any time interfere or to prevent an untrammeled exercise of the right of suffrage. What does that mean, Keith? What does that mean? When you swear an oath to support and defend that, what does that mean?
That means that you will defend the right of people to vote and participate in elections in every way possible. Obviously, felons cannot vote, so there are certain situations, mental incapacitation also. There are certain situations that have to be legally adjudicated. But once you reach the age of voting, then the state should not be interfering with your right to vote and making it possible for you to vote.
Well, did you swear an oath to protect that article, Article 127?
I did.
And okay, so if we've sworn an oath, if our legislators and senators have sworn an oath to support the state of Wyoming's Constitution, and they turn around and then implement legislation that's contrary to that oath, does that make them forsworn? Or is that up to interpretation?
To me, it means they're not serious about their oath. They have a higher calling in their mind to the words of the Constitution. And of course, it's a legal question. What does this word mean? What does that word mean? But the intent in the Wyoming State Constitution is pretty clear in most cases. And there's a willful ignorance of those words, and that has been common for 10 years probably amongst a certain group of legislators, and the group is getting bigger. And so now we have just kind of running roughshod over constitutional language situation.
So we have some folks in our local government, local and statewide government, that disregard their oath that they take to support and defend the Constitution. That's what it sounds like to me.
It's true. It's the citizens' duty to pay attention to that, and if they generally believe the oath is not being adhered to, so it's their job to run for office and boot the offender out.
So we need to step up. What Keith is saying, we need to step up and support the candidates that are willing to defend their oath of office. So if you've made an oath to support and defend the Constitution, including Article 1, Section 27, and you willfully disregard the wording of Article 1, Section 27, and pass legislation that does interfere with that section of that oath that says interfere to prevent an untrammeled exercise of the right of suffrage. So if you interfere with the right of a citizen to vote, such as, say, enacting legislation that prevents people to vote if they happen to move here within the 30 days of an election, and say that just because you've moved here, you're not really allowed to vote because we've enacted legislation. That to me sounds like somebody has voted to interfere with someone's right to suffrage. And in Wyoming, I think that's important. So I guess, folks, I'm going to read you a list of the Senate members that are on the Corporations Committee. So if you happen to see them out this campaign trail, you can ask them if they are serious about the oath that they swore to their constituencies to support and defend the Constitution. Okay, we have Cale Case from Lander. We have Brian Bonner from Douglas. We have Van Bockstetter from Afton. We have Bill Landon from Casper. We have Cherry Steinmetz from Torrington. We have Christopher Knapp from Gillette. We have Gary Brown from Cheyenne. We have Paul Hawk from Powder River Basin. We have Steve Johnson from Cheyenne. We have Tony Locke from Casper. We have Ann Lucas from Cheyenne. We have Joe Webb from Lyman. Nina Weber from Cody. Mike Yin from Jackson. Each of those folks deserve a question. Do they actually support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? And do they support the Constitution of Wyoming?
And that is a joint legislative committee, so there's state House members in addition to state Senate members in there, just to make sure that
right.
People understand
there most certainly are.
It's a joint committee.
There were actually 5 senators and nine House reps, and so from all over the state. And you can go and look these folks up and see what their voting records are. When we look at this, as Mike Lebnow says, 100 pieces of legislation over 4 years, and as I looked up, 38 pieces over the past 2 years. And the only thing that I found positive in support of the actual citizen, making it easing the citizens' right to vote was one statement in one of the bills that was up for vote, and it required that the state send out an email when they purged a name from the voter rolls. So that was the only positive thing, was that you would get an email if you're being purged from the voter rolls. All with that in mind, the only thing that these 38 and these 100 things did, these 100 pieces of legislation did, were to impede or hinder the regular Wyoming citizens' right to speak for themselves, the right to vote, and it chills the participation in our election system. Our young people feel like it's too much trouble to go out and register to vote now. A lot of people feel that way, and I ask why.
Always keeping in mind that we had a perfectly honorable voting system to begin with. This is all based on phony narratives.
When you say
voter fraud narrative, the illegals are being paid to vote illegally narrative, all that is phony information designed to inculcate support in the citizens for changing things for the worse.
What's really shocking to me is that we have a series of county clerks in Wyoming that have a very important job, and we trust those county clerks by and large for the most part. Yeah, evidently, the Weston County Clerk made a mistake, and we had to hear about that. But that was all resolved. You know, the hand count was done, and everything was fine after the hand count was done. So everything was resolved after that. And now we see, just recently out of Lander, we see 15 new resolutions that are going to be talked about to further limit the right to suffrage in Wyoming. And why is that? Why do we have to have 15 more pieces of legislation to limit you and I's right to express ourselves?
Well, to a certain extent, I think it's part of the advertising environment that you always have to give people something new to think about. There's always a new problem. There's always a new threat that has to be addressed. So to me, it's part of the ongoing phony narrative of voter fraud and voter irregularities. So
crossover voting. The Democrats are trying to influence. The Democrats are trying to influence our elections,
right?
And we're like afraid that they've infiltrated the Republican Party now, and we want to pre-select our candidates, and
if somebody wants to be a Republican, they have every right to be a Republican.
Oh, you mean that would be like something that's enshrined in our federal constitution?
Well, or you could
the right to speech.
That's part of the state constitution.
Well, the state constitution incorporates the federal constitution. But anyway, I guess my biggest beef here with this whole scenario is the chilling effect that it's having on our young people. Our young people are avoiding getting involved in politics because somebody mentioned this on a Facebook feed. It's like stepping in dog poo, Keith. Getting involved in politics is like stepping in dog poo. It gets on your foot. It stinks. It's hard to get off. I'm like, is this what our politics have degraded to?
This is a recent phenomena. I mean, this is the last 10 to 15 years where things have really gone to the dark side. Before that, it was largely a respectful system. There's a little bit of nastiness and mudslinging, but there wasn't these massive phony narratives and these personal attacks. It was a respectful system for the most part.
And when you say a phony narrative, I like to think of it like this: as smoke being packed up somebody's backside. Until to the point where they can no longer think straight, and it affects what they perceive as being the truth.
Well, most people have a limited amount of sources for information, and if they've decided on a certain algorithmic or supported source of information, they're fed that information. Their smoke was blown into that.
Yeah, the smoke. We've got a smoke packing system, don't we? and we're in control of our own smoke packing.
It is.
Yeah, I think we're kind of reiterating the same thing. So, Keith, maybe we should wrap this one up. I like to thank
the thing to look for is how many candidates are going to be on the ballot, how many unfreedom caucus members are being challenged in the primary, how many Democrats are in the races, because there's 62 state house seats up and 16 state senate seats are up. And so we watch to see how many of those are contested, because a lot of them will just be a free ride for whoever signed up.
Yeah, so what Keith is saying is it's the odd seat numbers that are up for re-election in the Senate this year. So that's 16. If they're an odd number, then your senator is up for re-election. You should be looking. We as voters should be looking at the voting records to see. And I think it simply should boil down to whether or not they are supporting your right to speak, your right to vote, and protecting that right. If they're not, if our senators and our House reps are not doing that, we need to move them along, folks. Anyway, this is Jimmy Scobar. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.